Today I want to talk about swiping versus stealing in your copywriting. And this applies whether you're writing copy for your own business or writing copy for clients. Probably doubly if you're writing copy for clients, but it still applies if you're writing for your own business. So I feel motivated to talk about this because kind of a whole mix of things came together, and I realized that there's often this fine line that I walk between actually coming out and being against swiping copy, and at the same time noticing that in my own behavior, I'm still doing some things that might be recognized as swiping. And really, the big distinction comes down to what I opened with, swiping versus stealing. So I have a couple stories that I'd like to lead off with, and then I'd like to give you some very specific advice on like the type of swiping that works to do regularly versus the type of swiping you probably never want to do. So first off, years ago, when I was really just coming up in the copywriting business, I had an opportunity to be a copy chief at a financial publisher. And we were recruiting a bunch of copywriters. We put out a spec challenge and we asked copywriters to submit their work. And, some were great, some were not so great. And, so it was a whole mix, but I was reading through all the copy. And one particular copywriter, what I noticed was that certain segments of his copy really just seemed to be super powerful. But the entire copy, like the gestalt, the total experience of the copy was off. Like something was really off about it. So it was interesting to have this juxtaposition of these really good blocks of copy, but also this, just this feeling as I was reading that, hey, something's not right about this. And so I copied and pasted some of those blocks of copy into Google. And I very quickly discovered that there was copy written by Clayton Makepeace, and there was copy, I think, written by Gary Bencivenga, and there was copy written by some other copywriters. And what had happened was this guy, like his belief was that you basically, the way that you were a good copywriter, I don't know, was that you copied and pasted other people's copy into your document. And so he had copied all of this in. But the problem was that copy, in the investment markets, things are changing all the time, and sometimes they're changing very fast. And that copy that he was copying and pasting had actually been written before the 2008 crisis, and he was submitting this copy after the 2008 crisis. And so there was this weird, like, the ideas weren't right, the market conditions weren't right, all of that. Like, it was just off. And so, like, if you're obsessed with writing good copy by stealing other people's work, you're going to very likely end up in a situation where something just feels off to the reader. And they won't even necessarily be able to put their finger on it, but they will be able to put their finger on the back button and get off your site right away because they just don't believe you. And you lose credibility by having a message that just resonates in the wrong way. And, that's certainly not the only time that I've been frustrated with swiping. Shortly after I wrote the Titans of Direct Response promo, I actually ran into somebody who was in marketing, right? So like Titans of Direct Response, gigantic event. The entire industry knew about it. It was like all the top minds in direct marketing, or most of them were there. And the promo that I wrote for Brian Kurtz got a ton of attention too. And at some point fairly early in that copy, I had a who this is for, who this is not for. And hey, that's not original to me, who this is for, who this is not for. And you can absolutely use that idea in your copy. Like, here's who should not come to our event. Here's who should not go through this. Here's who should not buy. And here's who should buy, right? Like it's a very standard chunk of copy that can really fit into a lot of different advertisements. If you had just taken that, I wouldn't have noticed. But there was a guy who actually took the entire chunk of copy saying who this is for, who this is not for, or flipping it the other way around. And he just copied and pasted it into his. And I saw, I think it was on some message board where he was actually asking for feedback on his landing page. And I saw it and I was just like, ooh, that doesn't feel good to me, right? And I've even had situations like I had a subscriber who asked this question and it stuck with me, but I haven't actually made a video answering it directly. So we'll call this the answer to that question. The subscriber asked a question saying, hey, if you've written a successful promotion, a successful landing page, whatever it is, for one client in an industry, and then you go over to another client in the industry and their offer is similar enough, would you say, oh, that idea worked over there, so I'm going to use it over here? And I will say, like, starting to transition into telling you what to do and what not to do, I will say that I would actually recommend against it. I have used similar offer structures, similar like outlines, that sort of thing, similar order form pages, all of that within an industry between clients, and there's never really a question about that. But that offer, that introduction, or not the offer, the pitch, the introduction, the story, the big idea, you don't want to copy that from client to client, because there is a very high likelihood it is not going to work the same for the second client, because part of what makes a big idea work is that it feels unique and new and different to the audience. And if suddenly client A is having a bunch of success with this idea, and then even if you completely rewrite the idea and it's all new words, but you present it through client B's marketing, it's not going to have that same appeal, because it's not going to get the same attention as being this like unique big idea. And so I wouldn't recommend that kind of client to client swiping of your own ideas within an industry, especially not kind of back-to-back projects. And you do have the potential to get in trouble with both clients for doing that too. Like if the client doesn't like what you just did, stealing your idea from one promotion and putting it in another, you have the potential to get kicked out of working with both clients. So in general, I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend doing the research and finding a new big idea. So I did say, like, here's where not to swipe and here's where to swipe. So I want to dive in. I have a couple of notes here on that. So first off, where I'm least likely to swipe, where I don't think swiping is ever really a good idea. And we're going to talk about the whole swiping versus stealing thing, right? I hate direct stealing. Some people call this swiping, and I really don't think that, like, it is two different things to say, oh, here's like the deep psychology of something that works, or here's something that I recognize that works as a general formula. And I can apply that deep psychology in a completely new way over in this other place. That to me is the swiping that works. And like a really smart top copywriter that does swiping is going to do that. They're going to say, oh, what works about this? Okay, how can I apply what works about that here, but also do it something new, right? But the direct stealing bit, you will never find somebody who is actually like an A-list copywriter who's directly stealing from other writers. And the bigger the block of copy, the less likely it is that you're going to find anything that lines up. Little like phrases, sentences, we all use the same phrases and sentences. But wait, there's more, right? That's a little over the top. But wait, there's more. Let me tell you about the blah, 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 blah. And it's all the same, like the exact same bonuses, let's say. Create these bonuses just so we can steal the other person's copy. That is not good copywriting, and you'll never find a top copywriter who does that. But I do something like fairly close. So where I'm least likely to swipe is like the hooks and pitches, the big ideas, the headlines, everything at the top of the funnel where it's going to the broadest market, right? All of that like introduction to the idea, all of that connecting with the audience in a new way. Like if you're not doing it in a new way that's based on what's going on in the world right now, in the market right now, et cetera. If you're not doing all of that like initial connection with your audience in a new way, you're just not going to get the attention. And even if like if you get a little bit of attention, they're going to see what you do as a Me Too offer, as like a hey, that person is selling this, and so I'm selling that too. And you just don't get the same traction when you put out an offer where you're basically just copying what somebody else has done. And so I don't do it, and I don't recommend that you do it. Even if you're inspired by like I love the John Caples, they laugh when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play ... It's the introduction to a story of like, I was in a situation where people openly doubted me and mocked me but then I proved them wrong. And John Capel swiped himself. He said, they grinned when the waiter spoke to me in French. But now I'm forgetting the second half of that headline. But their smiles turned to amazement at my reply. It's something like that. He takes the exact same deep psychology and he writes a brand new headline around that, like that 2-part, they doubted me. They openly doubted me, but then I proved them wrong. And he opens the story that way. And yeah, you can do that a little bit, but that was French versus piano, like very different markets, right? But again, like that early copy, the top of funnel copy, the early connection copy with your audience, that's where you should be least likely to swipe, and where you do the least like direct modeling of other people's copy, other people's idea. Like you should come up with your own freaking ideas and your own freaking language and be inspired by the people who came before you, but don't copy them. That said, the further you get down the funnel, the further you get into the communication process, the more what you do becomes formulaic and can be copied. I still don't recommend stealing other people's copy, but hey, most guarantees I've written have pretty much the same language. I do very specific like setups for bonuses and stuff. Closes can be very similar. Order forms end up looking very similar from order form to order form. Things that you do deeper in the copy when you're no longer introducing the product and you're just trying to move the sale forward. A lot of that stuff, it can be much more closely modeled on what other people do. And so the type of swiping that I do regularly is I do reuse some of my own copy chunks, especially much deeper on. I model deep funnel copy on what works before. And, if you are going to do more, like, so I was actually talking to a coaching client before recording this video, and we were looking at a particular type of sales letter, and we found 3 different examples, and we were talking about how do you take these examples that are written by these other marketers and actually use that to inform, even if you're going to do stuff like starting at the top of the sales letter. And what I told him is what you need to do is it's basically 3 steps: analyze, outline, rewrite. So you analyze what this particular message is doing. So you say, oh, it starts off with some proof, and then, there's like the hook, and then there's some proof, and then there's the story, and then there's an explanation of what you get, and then there's a description of the offer, and then there's like bonuses, and then there's a call to action, right? And just off the top of my head, that's a really rough structure of what we're looking at. So we analyze that. And then you can outline that kind of as you're doing the analysis, right? You outline it. And then you close the page that you were analyzing. You put that away where you can't see it. And you write from your own outline of what needs to happen. And that's like the analyze, outline, rewrite technique. And that's like ethical and honest and effective swiping, because the structure of great copy is very similar from situation to situation, from piece of copy to piece of copy. The structure of how you present an offer, things like that. But the superficial details should always feel fresh and new to this particular piece of copy. And the superficial details are where you get to shine as a copywriter. And so if you take that deep structure and you model it, and then you write your own message on top of that deep structure, that is effective swiping. That's good swiping. And in my Facebook group for BTMS Insiders, my paid membership site, somebody actually asked me recently, like I was talking about one copywriter that I've been studying recently and how I really appreciated their method. And this copywriter was saying, oh, well, I read a different perspective on this that said that if you have these models of like these deep structure models, like if you have these outlines, does that make copywriters just more replaceable by things like AI? And I said, well, if you know, Hollywood has a model of the hero's journey. Shakespeare has a model of iambic pentameter. Does that make both of them replaceable by AI? Maybe. And AI will eventually be able to replace every skilled and unskilled bit of labor that we do. But in the short run, AI, I don't believe is going to replace you anytime soon, especially if you're writing longer, more in-depth narrative copy. And the narrative, the superficial stuff that you layer on top of that structure is so important that it doesn't matter if we all copy this deep structure. That superficial stuff is still kind of what makes the magic of a great copywriter. And in the short term, being able to model the deep structure of what we know works and has been repeated over and over in market to market, offer to offer, product to product, service to service, business to business, right? If we model that deep structure that works, as we put our own details on the surface, like that's how you're going to succeed fastest in the short term. And so my recommendation, again, it's swipe, especially focus on the deep structure, the deep psychology. That's what I teach in BTMS Insiders, my training library, with things like my high velocity copywriting program and a bunch of other stuff in there. I talk about the deep structure of all of this, of like selling stories, etc. And so my recommendation, avoid stealing altogether. Swipe as much as you like, as long as you do it in this way where it's more of a modeling. And the deeper in the customer communication you go, the more you can get away with that feeling more and more like what's out there already. But early on, as you're making your first impression, as you're connecting with people, as you're presenting your idea for the first time, that's when it's the most important to be recognized as somebody who has something unique and interesting and new to say. My name is Furr. This has been a video issue of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. I hope that you found it valuable. I'd love it if you do leave a comment below with this video and let me know on a scale of 1 to 10 how valuable you found it and why. What's your big takeaway action item as a result of watching? Also, tap that like button before you go so you get more content like this delivered to you. And so the magical algorithms of the internet will share it with more people like you who will find it valuable. You can certainly share it with folks directly. And subscribe before you go. Subscribe here. You can also go to breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com, get my daily emails Monday through Friday, including these videos and more exclusive content for email subscribers. And hey, subscribe to my BTMS Insiders training library. If you've watched this far, you recognize that I have something of value for you, and you can try your first month completely risk-free, no obligation. I'll include a link in the description to BTMS Insiders, my training library as well. And you can check out all the training for copywriters and marketers that I have in there. Again, I'm Roy Furr for Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. I was aiming for that 10 out of 10 value. I hope that I've delivered it here, and I look forward to seeing you again in your next video issue. I'll see you soon. Bye.